This is the Howard Vortex with Dr. Drew and Ami Horowitz. This is the Howard Vortex with Dr. Drew and Ami Horowitz. Baba booey to you. Here comes Dr. Drew and Ami Horowitz. The Howard Vortex. Howard.
So, hey, welcome to another Howard Vortex. Ami Horowitz, welcome.
Always a pleasure, Dr. Drew.
It's a pleasure. What are you working on these days?
Oh God, I don't. I'm so. I actually just came back from a 10-day trip to Peru.
Oh my God!
Which was. Have you ever been to Peru?
Nope.
Absolutely fascinating. One of the most fascinating parts of that trip was, Peru is where the Incas were. And I was in Machu Picchu, and everybody's walking around. They're thinking to themselves, exclaiming to each other, "Look at this technological engineering marvel of Machu Picchu! Look what they built!" And I quickly looked up on my phone when the Incas were around.
Yeah.
Now, they were around the 1500s.
Yeah.
This is when they built Machu Picchu. And they built these little stone structures. And I'm thinking to myself, the 1500s, Europe had stocks and bonds. The Sistine Chapel was built. I mean, the Europeans, even frankly the Egyptians and the Chinese, were building what they built in Machu Picchu 3,000 years ago. And I was thinking to myself, this is a new expression of cultural relativity. They're trying to bring this other culture, which clearly was backwards in the 1500s, right? And brutal, right? They sacrificed children. I found it so fascinating that people are going out of their ways to try to raise up this notion of what the Incas were able to build. Well, and every time I try to push back, they would yell at me as I was a bigot.
Oh yeah, here comes your videos. And so in a weird way, it's a what's the word? I guess it's a what's the word I'm looking for when you look down upon somebody? It's the Western society going, oh, these primitive people.
Like patronizing.
Yeah, patronizing. These primitive people were able to pull this off, as opposed to saying, no. These were in a relatively evolved society that was stuck in a certain state, and part of it may have been those child sacrifices. That might have been what kept them stuck. Who knows?
Yeah, that won't help. That doesn't help.
No, it does not help. So explain to our guest about our guest today, Jolie.
Yeah, so we have a really fascinating guest here. So, Dr. Drew and I have talked for a while about the type of guest we want to have, the show we want to have and create. And we both came to the conclusion that we don't just want to interview Wack Packers, but maybe the people who would be most interesting are what Dr. Drew calls the Wack Pack adjacent. Because they might have insight into the lives of the Wack Pack that we could not get out of a Wack Packer himself.
That's right.
So we have somebody tonight, Jolie, who you all know from the Howard Stern show, who has an absolutely, I might dare say, intimate relationship, not sexual, but certainly an emotionally intimate relationship with Howard. So I think we're going to get a lot of interesting stuff out of this tonight.
Let's bring her in.
Hi.
Hello, Dr. Drew. Hi, Ami.
I guess, Jolie, you're the first person we've had who has been what we call Wack Pack adjacent. So we've had a whole bunch of Wack Packers on the show, but you're the first person who can give a certain amount of insight outside of the primary person themselves. I mean, we can probably call this episode The Wack Pack and the Women Who Love Them. And so, Jolie, thank you so much for coming on. We really, really appreciate it. This is going to be a fascinating interview, I think.
It is my pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
So let's begin with something obvious. How long have you been a Howard Stern fan? How did you get involved with the show? Walk us through that.
Okay, so in a nutshell, I have been a Stern fan for a little over 20 years. I've been listening on and off on the radio and the different moves he made, and then finally to satellite radio. So I tell people I'm not what you call a super fan. I can't quote every show. I can't recall dates. And, there's some people out there who really just know their stuff better than I do. But I'm a true fan. I've listened forever and just adore him and what he's done and what he brings to my commute every day. So I've always been fascinated by all the different characters, if you will, on the show. Certainly Erik being one of them. And I came to know Erik through Twitter. So basically, followed Erik on Twitter one evening, followed a bunch of guys from the show actually just to see what's going on with them. And almost immediately I had a message in my inbox from Erik asking if he could come visit me in Atlanta.
Oh, my God. Wait.
Whoa.
Before you had any interaction with him, he already wanted to come visit?
It was literally, thanks for following me. Can I come visit you in Atlanta?
What did you think?
I said no. I think I said no, LOL, because I wasn't sure. I didn't think he was serious. And I believe I told Howard when I was on this show that I wasn't sure if Erik even ran his account. I hadn't been watching or reading any of his tweets. I think I was just getting into Twitter, actually. And so I just thought it was some sort of joke. And then he was asking, can I call you? Can you call me to say goodnight? Can I FaceTime you? You seem like a beautiful person. I'd like to, hear your voice or see your face, that kind of thing. And that went on for a while. And I would just keep turning down his requests.
How did that not make you run for the hills, like straight up? I don't go, wow, that is such a strong come on, right?
It is, but then in my head, I'm like, well, if this really is High Pitch Erik, then I guess it makes sense. I mean, he's actually, nothing about this should surprise me. It didn't make me run for the hills. I mean, I also didn't give him my number or, let him FaceTime me. But, it was, he worked on me for a couple of months before I was finally like, maybe one night I was out and had one glass of wine too many and was like, okay, you can FaceTime me. And then it just went from there. So I just thought it was funny. I don't find him, I know he has threatened people, but I don't find him threatening.
Including women.
Do you find him attractive?
I do not in that way, no.
Okay. And Howard's opening question to you is, are you suffering from Stockholm Syndrome? Which I thought was pretty funny. Are you suffering
That was funny. I thought he was going to say blink once for yes.
Well, if you have to use a code such as that this evening, please let us know. But
I will.
But do you feel, did you explain that you did not have Stockholm Syndrome, or do you think you have a whiff of it?
No, that's funny. Do I have a whiff of it? I don't think that I do, but I do feel responsible somehow. I don't want to say for Erik's happiness. I feel responsible for him slightly. I did befriend him, allow him to befriend me. I did sort of let him into my circle. And then with that comes everything that Erik is. And this is nothing I've not said to him directly. I mean, he comes with a lot of baggage and issues, and a
lot of stuff comes piling on in with old Erik.
Right, and so I think I feel responsible for, when we didn't get to discuss this on the Stern show, but there was a period of maybe 4 or 5 months when if I didn't respond to Erik in a timely manner in his head, or if I told him I can't talk, tonight, or I can't talk today, or just anything didn't go his way, he would literally go to the emergency room.
With
tell
what?
them he had chest pains or something.
God. Well, let me go back. Let me go back to Howard's opening question. Are you sure you don't have Stockholm Syndrome? Because that sounds like being held hostage to his medical status. Now, I don't understand if you don't want to reveal this, or if this is not true. But are you a nurse?
I am, and we can certainly talk about that.
And what kind of nursing do you do?
So, I specialize in care for those with catastrophic injuries, primarily spinal cord and brain injuries.
Are you on a rehab unit, or you do private care, or what do you do?
My company does private duty home care.
Got it. Okay.
So so the clients that I have, they have care in the home, most of them around the clock.
So you're used to highly dependent, very needy patients, not inappropriately so, but very much so because of the medical condition they find themselves. And Erik is not vastly different sort of needs, is it?
You're right. No, he's not much different. I mean, there's a lot of redirecting and a lot of me having to understand, why or even just trying to understand why does he behave this way. So,
but most people who don't take their work home with them, right? In other words, most people who are involved with needy people on their day job certainly aren't looking for that at night, which I find it very curious that you actually were almost seeking.
You're so naive. You're so naive, my good friend.
Really?
Whatever brings us into our professions tends to get reflected in our relationships as well, particularly when they're caretaking professions. Would you agree,
yeah,
Jolie?
I agree with that. And I see where Ami's coming from. You would think that, the type of clients that I have, they don't know that or care that it's a weekend or that it's a holiday or that it's 9:00 at night. Their life is happening to them when it's happening. So basically, I do take my work home with me. And yes, I would agree with what you said, Dr. Drew, that those things reflect in personal relationships as well.
The good news is she doesn't let it go all the way into a romantic life, which is what many humans do. And she was able to set a boundary at that point, or else she'd be.
Well, we don't know what kind of guy she dates.
Well, go ahead. You ask those questions.
Yeah. So yeah. What kind of guys do you date? In terms of looks, in terms of personality. What do you look for?
I have not. I haven't dated in a long time, 10 months.
How come?
So
you've been too busy with Erik?
Yeah, it's like work, and then Erik is a second job on top of what I'm already doing. I really do feel that way sometimes. When I do date, I tend to like. I tend to like older men who are more. I'm 41, so someone's older than me. I think maybe I'm looking for that the kind of care that I give people. Maybe I'm looking for that in a partner.
Not so bad. That's not such a bad thing, right? That's all right.
No, that's fine.
I don't know. You
Julie,
tell me if it's that or not.
Well, need some more information for us, but I don't think so. But go ahead, Ami.
Okay.
Well, the question that jumps to mind is, do you have father issues? Did you have a good relationship with your father, or not such a good relationship with your father?
I had a great relationship with my dad. He has actually had a stroke 7 years ago that has him. He's completely incapacitated. And
I'm so sorry to hear that.
Thank you. It's been rough, but we make the most out of it. But yeah, so definitely for the past years, I haven't had a father figure. I feel like I'm everyone's mother.
Did you have a mom?
My mother is around. I'm very close to her. I love her very much, but I'm her mom.
Oh, there you go. And what's her deal? What's her condition?
Really bad depression. A long skid with addiction to like Xanax and muscle relaxers, just wanting to mask how she feels, I guess, all the time, and not really knowing what depression was so long ago when I was younger and people didn't really talk about it as much. So it's just been, for me, she just hasn't been properly medicated all of her life.
Well, it sounds like drug addiction too, on top of the depression.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so, so this is codependency, right? And nurses are sort of professional codependents. They make great caretakers. It's sort of a liability that can be turned into an asset. But in our interpersonal lives, that's when it can become a little problematic. And I can see how you can get sucked in by Erik and not be able to. And you sound like somebody that does not set boundary with your patients, because they're not those kinds of patients. You really kind of can't set boundaries with them. And unfortunately, with Erik, it's pretty hard to set boundaries with him too, isn't it?
It is difficult because with my patients, they don't, and this isn't negative, they don't care because, like I said, if something's happening to them, it's happening to them in real time. I have other people who are supposed to buffer me from that, but they usually tend to need my, if something comes up at 10 o'clock at night, like what should we do? Is this the right step? And that's fine. That's what I do for a living. And yeah. I own that. But with Erik, I have the conversation just like we did on the air, on the Stern Show. Erik, you expect too much from me, that people that I know and love for 20, 30 years, even my own family, they don't expect this from me.
And what does he
They
say?
understand that I'm working.
Yeah, what does he say to that?
Babe, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, babe. I'm going to do better with my text. I don't want to make you mad at me. I don't want to, and then I have to, I have to take a step back and say, Erik, you are not making me mad necessarily. You're frustrating me because you text me on a day that I tell you I'm going to be really busy today. And I got a lot of meetings. I got this, I've got that. And then you'll text me, 17 times to say, I'm doing better with my text today. Aren't you proud of me?
So he never takes what he never responds the way you need him to respond when you tell him these things, right? He just continues the same behavioral patterns.
Right. I'll see it ease up a little bit for a day. Sometimes we've gone a week, depending on what he has going on in his life. I mean, if he has things, if he's filming, his Blue Bloods and stuff, it's less, he needs me less. But when he's sitting at home all day with absolutely nothing to do, and I'm out working 12, and 14-hour days, that doesn't translate to him that I'm tired, that, yes, I have to tell him, I still love you. We're still friends. I'm not mad at you. I don't hate you. Because all the texts will come in, are you mad at me, babe? Do you hate me, babe? I feel like you're mad at me. And then he's worried about me. All of a sudden he's worried. I'm like, Erik, I'm fine. You've seen me tweet something on Twitter, like, because you're stalking every single movement that I make on social media. You know that I'm alive, so you don't have to send me the text to say you're worried about me because you haven't heard from me.
He really is. He's stalking you, right? And do you ever get fearful that if you need to end this relationship for any reason, he's going to either make himself sick or come after you in some way?
Come after me, no. I'm not scared of Erik physically in any way, shape, or form. We made a joke about that on Stern, but I was serious. I'm not afraid of Erik, but
But he has a history of that, right?
Yes, I do. And oh yeah, and really graphic detail. Like, I will cut your throat. Yeah. I'm all the way in Atlanta. He's in New York. I'm not afraid of them. I don't know if there's any record, not that I know of Erik actually putting his hands on someone, but I think that's the way he fights. And it doesn't make it right. I'm certainly not saying that it's okay, but I think that's the only way he knows to fight. But I'm not afraid of him, but I am afraid that he would do something to hurt himself, yes. Mm-hmm. He has, like I said earlier in the show, he has checked himself into a hospital to get attention when I don't respond to him.
That makes you a hostage, right?
I do. Well, when you put it that way, I do feel. Yeah, I definitely feel tied to him.
Yeah, I'm not saying you need to end this relationship, but that has qualities of domestic abuse. This is a kind of a domestic abuse relationship where somebody's held hostage, and and your needs are never any consideration, and you're sort of stalked, and I don't know. It's tough. It's a lot of work.
In other words, this is not exactly a healthy relationship.
Well, how could you have a healthy relationship with Erik? Let's be honest.
True.
Not that none of all three of us love Erik, but honestly, if you're going to have a relationship with Erik, it's not going to be what you call healthy. It's just not possible.
It's not, and anytime that I can get him on the path of normalcy, it is because it's all contrived. It's like, Erik, you need to do this and not do that, and do this, and I can't be there to give him step by step for life every single day. As a nurse, do you can't do it.
Do you think about what you're dealing with there? Any sort of sense of what the pathology is here that you're dealing with?
I think about it a lot.
And what do you imagine that is? What do you imagine?
Well, I don't want to sound. You forgive me.
We're speculating. We're speculating
to you, Dr. Drew.
No, we're speculating, and we're not. And please don't say anything you're not comfortable with. And we're not being pejorative. We don't want to, hurt Erik or make Erik angry. But we're just trying to understand him. And there are ways of understanding people by thinking in terms of diagnostic categories. And sometimes those categories to other people sound harsh, but they're just categories. They're just people fall into categories. That's all. And
right.
Erik has some. I can't quite figure it out myself.
So here's what I think about. And again, Erik knows that I love him. I don't want to have to put a disclaimer on it, but we've talked about these things. I know that there's been some IQ testing that he tested really low.
Yeah, but he listened to him speak. I talked to him about that too, and he got just under 70, and he needed to get there to get his disability. And he uses language that people at that level of IQ just don't use. And I raised that to him, and he sort of went, oh, well, maybe you got me. And I said, look, I'm giving you a compliment because you are much smarter than a 68 IQ. You just are. That's just I just listen to the language he uses and the way he expresses himself. And it's, sometimes he gets lost in things, and I'm sure he doesn't have a doesn't have a high IQ, but he's not, I don't get the 68. Do you?
I don't. And so I've actually said that to him. I have said this actually on another podcast, a friend of his so it's out there that I've said, Erik, you are so much more intelligent than what anyone gives you credit for. And I don't know if that you're not giving yourself the credit, or if, testing that low was, an end means with his disability. But there are times when he is, he's using SAT words. He is really on top of it.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And when I comment on it, he, I see a change in him, and I think that maybe there's some.
Well, Ami was very direct with him about that. Remember Ami?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he was.
No, he is clearly doing it in order to get disability, and it is what it is. But
and we don't. And you were clear. You didn't blame him. It's the nature of the system, and he's
no. The sister allows.
Yeah.
The system is created to be gamed.
Yeah.
There's no question about it.
Yeah.
So I don't blame him for doing that, but it does speak to a certain level of manipulation that he often engages in, whether it be the system or people.
Uh-huh.
He manipulates people all the time. Do you feel that at all? Yeah.
No,
and
he
how
does.
do you deal with that?
I don't like it. He has reached out to people that I know that he doesn't know. And I hate to keep using Twitter, but here, let's face it, that's just a big pool of all kinds of people there. And he can see who I interact with and who I don't. And like if I know someone more personally than the next guy, for example, he'll send them a message and ask them for money.
Kidding me. People he doesn't know.
Yep, and he'll send messages and ask, what is it that you want with Jolie? Not threatening messages to this point, but just kind of like, telling guys you need to back off, like if he thinks someone's being flirty with me. I think Erik shows a lot of signs, and I don't know if Dr. Drew's going to agree with me, but of, in a way, a sociopath.
Well, I've talked about that. He certainly has those features. And again, I don't know if that's something that's environmental because he's, had depression, anxiety, and suicide attempts and found his way into the system. And so the system has sort of created him into this guy that does this stuff, or whether it's some pre-existing phenomena. I don't know. But those qualities are, and did we use that word with him, Ami, when we were talking to him?
I don't recall, but it's almost impossible to imagine he does not have significant qualities of a sociopath. I think he sounds textbook to me.
Well, textbook. It's hard to tell with people, especially when they're on a bunch of Xanax and things like that, because he might be a drug addict. It could all be just drug addiction.
He's so over medicated. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
And then on top of those things, since y'all asked me how do I feel about what makes Erik tick or not, I think the loss of his mother, I think there's some kind of stunt in maturity with him.
Yeah.
He is childlike at times.
There was a developmental
mm-hmm.
piece here too, I agree. And maybe then again that with the drugs and the depression, it may all be, looking like sociopathy but not actually being that. Go ahead.
But I guess Jolie, it's what I have a hard time. I get that you feel he's in some ways a patient of yours, right? And you feel responsible. I don't exactly know why you feel responsible, but I guess that comes from the empathy that you have as a person for people. And I think it's a lovely thing. But what you're describing to me sounds we use the words, we've been throwing the word sociopathic, but beyond that, it's just so problematic in your life. I would not tolerate, frankly, any of it. I don't understand why you continue to have a relationship with a guy, and I mean, who hits up your friends on Twitter for money. I mean, that's crazy, Jolie.
The worst was him reaching out to my ex-husband, which I discussed on the Stern Show when I was there. Was he reached out to my ex-husband, and I thought, this is, for me, for whatever reason, even though I have a good relationship with my ex-husband, it's been years. We've been divorced for over 10 years. Everything is cool there. I just thought this was a whole different way of him trying to, it's like he reaches out and has all these tentacles that he wants to reach into every single part of my life, because if he does that, then he is further fastening himself onto me.
Yeah.
All I can think about is like an octopus with with the 8 arms, just like reaching out and grabbing onto something that's a part of me. And I mean, I don't know why. I mean, I think I feel sorry. I know I feel sorry for Erik.
But Dr. Drew, is this helping Erik, or is this continuing to reinforce his behavior?
She could. I mean, it sounds like she's trying to help him. I'm very sympathetic to the position Jolie is in, because I mean, you can't appreciate this, but when you have a clinical license and you get in deep with somebody, you feel like, well, here I am, and now I've got to really see it through, because you feel responsible. And I'm very sympathetic to that, and I think it's an ethical position that is appropriate, but you do have to get good at setting boundaries, or it will consume you.
You're right. And also, too, I think, I hate not to bring this up, it's not, I'm not trying to make it about me, but my sister, she did commit suicide 3 years ago this month. And my sister had a lot of emotional and mental problems that, much like my mother, I'll never know really what was wrong with Mandy. I think she may have been bipolar, or even had maybe even schizophrenic, but she never went to the right doctor, and some, whack job was just putting all kinds of medicine, throwing medicine at it that wasn't working for her. And I don't know. I mean, when someone dies that way, you feel guilty, because she never threatened suicide. We never expected it. And it comes from out of nowhere, and you think of all the things you could have done. And in a way, I feel like maybe if I keep Erik safe, then I've,
makes
done
sense.
Right by my sister.
Yep, I
But
get it.
There's a flip side.
But all of them,
there's a flip side to that, because if God forbid he commits suicide, are you going to feel that that's on you?
Yes, she is. Of course, she is. She's because
that's
if he
horrible. You can't put yourself in that position.
If he doesn't, that's her thing too, right? But I will tell you, they all three, your mom, your sister, and Erik, have the same kind of a syndrome. This sort of poorly, not clear psychiatric depression, anxiety, too much meds, maybe some addictive overlay. It's all the same kind of thing, and those are dicey conditions, as you know, with not the greatest prognosis, no matter what you do, right?
You're correct. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. The one thing, I have one clear recommendation for you, Jolie, and that is you cannot go it alone. You got to have, just like when you have a family member with addiction, you have to get a sponsor in Al-Anon. I mean, you need the same kind of thing to deal with somebody like Erik, and to deal with your sister's stuff too, and your mom, and a therapist. If you have time, which you may not, but that would be really important. Or this will just deplete you. You got to have somebody in your corner. You know what I mean?
I agree with you, and I think that I have been putting that off for too long, and it's been suggested before, and I've never had any of that.
You need it.
You
need it, and you need it
I think
for
we
you.
All need it,
of course,
especially.
But you need it for you. Well, you need it because of the situation you're with. I'm saying you need it to survive the situation with Erik. Now, is he constantly pushing it to be a romantic thing?
No, not anymore. Not anymore.
Okay, so
however,
Go
ahead.
However, I want to hear the however.
And these are things that y'all may have heard already, but he is pushing lately. He wants us to have a child together.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. How would that happen?
he is
Dr.
serious
Drew, do I have to
about it.
explain to you how that
No.
works?
Listen, this is exactly what happened on the show, if I remember right. They were like, "How's it going to happen?" And because Erik doesn't really necessarily function all that well, and necessarily Jolie may not want to do it the old-fashioned way. How's that going to happen?
Right. So he actually. So here, this goes back to what you were saying before about where he tested with his IQ. He says that we should be foster parents.
Oh my
so
gosh!
He gets it. Like,
oh my goodness! No.
He gets.
Get a therapist.
Yeah.
Get a therapist, not a baby. That's by the way, that's my recommendation to most people out there. That's my general recommendation to America. Get a therapist, not a baby. Learn that from being involved.
I would
with
agree
teen
with
mom
that
kids.
for sure.
But
he doesn't try so much with the romantic stuff like he did in the beginning. It was, and I was very clear. You want to talk about boundaries? I mean,
well, I was going to say,
I have the proof in writing.
That's right. You knew how to do that. You see, now I know you. Mm-hmm. Now I know you're capable of boundaries. Right. Number one. What's that, Ami?
No, I was going to say, but you realize he still wants to have sex with you, right? You are aware. You're not deluding yourself to thinking he doesn't want to do it anymore.
No, I know he still wants to have sex with me, yes.
Okay. And to be fair, now let me say a couple things. Now, I'm just talking to you for a few minutes. I'm going to bet you're an amazing nurse, like outstanding, like highly sought after for what you do. Am I right?
You are. I am the best in my industry.
Yeah, I have no doubt. I can tell by your smarts and so your approach and who you are and your level of commitment and things. And that's how you do that. You do it. You consumed by it. That's what that work is. If you're really doing it properly, and good for you. Good on you. I'm so delighted. But it's consuming. I was doing it the same way as a physician. I ended up in the therapist office. You got to do it. You really do. I'm not
Someone
kidding.
has to help you too,
yeah,
right?
That's exactly right.
Need...
It's exactly right. You just need that person in your corner, and it helps you kind of see things a little more clearly. Now, to be fair, so that all said, that's all real. That's you. That's all great. But you get a secondary gain out of this whole thing too. You get to be a part of the Howard Stern show, which must be kind of a weird dream come true.
Yes. So I'm glad you brought that up. I want to speak about that just briefly. I was asked to be on the show. It was never my end game with Erik by any stretch of the imagination. However, the experience was so out of this world, and everyone treated me so lovely, and Howard was so lovely, and it was just an amazing experience.
Yeah,
but that definitely. I feel like Erik thinks that makes up for all of the grief that he's giving me.
No, but in a weird way, though, even without being on the show, you're a part of it by being in Erik's life the way you are, and I'm sure that's and it's okay. I mean, that's all right. You're allowed to have some secondary gain because you certainly are paying a big price, but
you're right. It comes with It comes with a lot of other stuff too, but no, it has been, that part of it has been interesting. Not even, like you said, even before I was on the show, just people want to know everything about Erik and his life, and no matter what it is, people are constantly looking in and asking questions, just like, I don't know. It's hard to explain. There's a phenomenon behind him, but you both know that. You're both fans of the show.
We're fans of the show, and we don't fully. Do you fully get the Erik phenomenon? I know it's there.
Honestly,
I'm not
yes,
sure.
I do.
You do get it. Tell me. Explain it.
Yeah.
Explain it.
Well, I just think that this is a guy who, I think the word with Erik, and we said it before, and I'll say it again, is manipulation. Mm-hmm. He knows how to manipulate a system. That speaks to why he claims he has a low IQ when he has not a high IQ, but certainly higher than what he claims to have, and his manipulation of people. And I brought this up to Erik. I wouldn't say this. There's nothing I would say on the air to you, Jolie. I would not say to Erik to his face. But a couple of things which really deeply disturbed me. I remember one time a police officer, out of the goodness of his heart, offered him tickets to a Yankee game. Oh yeah. And Erik said, "These seats aren't good enough. I want better seats." And he made this poor guy get him better seats.
You did bring that up to him too.
Yeah, no, and that's just one small example.
And as I recall, it sort of slid off him, like, whatever.
Yeah, it's like he's like whatever,
Yeah.
And or more recently when it came to his, I think is it Vinny, his attorney, and the man who goes out of his way in some ways, not as much, not to the depth and the extent that you do, but in some ways he tries to help Erik. He's working with Erik, and Erik's went on this radical tyrant. You heard the words he said about raping his wife and killing his kids, and all because he demanded from Vinny to buy him first class tickets to Atlanta because he wanted to attend the New Kids in the Block contest. Yeah, and I think that's when it comes to Erik, it's all about manipulating the person or the system, and I think that's essentially who he is. That's and again, God love him, and we all certainly love the character, but that's ultimately who I think if you dig deep, that's who he is. Am I wrong?
And I feel, no, I think that's his survival mechanism. I think those things are deeply disturbing, by the way. Just want to be on the record, just be clear to say that when you talk about someone's kids, raping, violence, that is disgusting. That's when I won't talk to him for 2 or 3 days, and he knows that I'm disgusted by him. But that lack of intelligence that is still there with Erik, when those words come out to me, that's the only way he knows how to fight. That shows the lack of intelligence he has. He wants so badly to get a point across that he's angry, that he's like, I'm going to kill you. And I could be way off with that, but I just don't think he knows how to, when it comes down to it, he's not so smart that he could use his words properly or handle a situation like that with maturity.
Well, that's emotional intelligence, right, Dr. Drew? Would you characterize low emotional intelligence?
Yeah, well, sure, but we discussed earlier. It feels developmental too, like it's like a kindergarten goes, "I'm going to kill you," It's that kind of a thing, I think. But why that arrest?
It's like a kid holding their breath.
Yeah,
or something,
that's right.
When they don't get their way.
It feels like that kind of thing. That's right. But it's and again, everyone that. Let's say the policeman that goes ahead and gets those extra Mets tickets for him. It's he has a golden halo about him because of the show, and people want to be near him and be a part of the experience that is this program, right? Would you, Ami? Am I onto that right
Sure.
here? Yeah.
No, and he knows exactly how to play it.
Yeah.
Right. He knows that he has a currency. Right, the currency is his association with the show, right. And he knows again, it goes back to the word. He knows how to manipulate it to get what he wants. And
but Howard outs him about it all the time, right? I mean, he constantly talks about his use of the system and how even when Erik isn't there, he's talking about his caretakers and things. And yet, how did Joey Boots seem like such a genuine dude, even though he was also a drug addict? What did you observe that relationship, Jolie?
A little bit. Actually, in the beginning, Joey hated my guts. He called me awful names, like the C word, everything. He thought I was a horrible person. I was trying to just latch on to Erik's, as Joey put it, may he rest in peace, Erik's fame. And in my mind, I'm just thinking there are so many more famous people that live close to me that are practically neighbors that I'm not trying to latch my hooks into the fame of Erik, High Pitch Erik from the Stern Show. I actually initially, because I am a glutton sometimes for punishment, I wanted to help Erik lose weight, and I did. I helped Erik lose 75 pounds just via phone, being here in Atlanta and him in New York. And so Joey at first didn't like me, and then another person came into Erik's life shortly after who had some sort of an agenda. I don't know how much I should say or not say about that, but this person had some sort of or was trying to have a career in the biz, I guess, and was clearly doing some things like sleeping in Erik's bed with him. Like, I've never even been to Erik's place, I go to New York.
Who is this?
Well, I remember this. Yeah, who was this one? I forget.
You remember? Her name was you just put me on this. April.
April.
Oh,
right.
Right. Is that the one? Was that the one when I'm in a love trice? Was that the?
That
he was
was
afraid to her.
Trice with,
Yes.
And what? Explain, explain your understanding of her, so people who don't remember.
So April was somebody he met, I guess, in a similar fashion to you, and she kept saying, "I'm going to come visit you." I don't remember all the exact details, but I do remember specifically she was on the show and she slept in his bed.
Right, but sex was being held out, right? That was being held out as an option by that one.
Yes.
And I bet Joey thought that Jolie was another April. I bet you.
Well, he realized after this April came along that I never tweeted about Erik or Stern Show, or that I knew Erik. I never tried to get any kind of recognition from that in any way, but she was constantly like, I'm with High Pitch Erik and I've slept in his bed. And, she fooled around with him and stuff, so that he would have something to talk about, so that they would want her to be on the show. And Joey, after seeing that contrast, was like, Jolie, I'm so sorry. I know that you love Erik, and, I'm the only one that's here for him. So, I mean, too, when Joey passed, it's like he has no one, Yeah. I told Howard on the show, there's no one who would even claim his body if he passed away tomorrow. I mean, he doesn't have a relationship with anyone in his family. So, but the relationship with Joey was definitely...
Why no one in his family? Why is that?
His sister's the only one who's left, and they were fighting over money.
Oh, right. I remember that, yes.
The dad is still alive, too.
And what happened there? Why no life? Why no relationship?
No relationship. I've asked Erik that. I even asked Erik once when I was doing a podcast with he and Gonzo if I could talk to his aunt who lives in Florida, because I wanted to understand Erik. I wanted to understand what was his childhood like. Was there a neighborhood like mine with an ice cream truck, that sometimes rode by? Was, what was it like, growing up for him? I don't quite understand why. I think he says his Stern Show, that whole thing is the reason why he doesn't talk to his family anymore. And then the money thing with his sister after his mom died. So that's all I know.
Dr. Drew, can I ask you a quick question about not only Erik, but it applies, I think, a lot of the Wack Packers, but particularly to Erik. Do you think that their association with the show, the obsession with the show, considering what kind of psychological state they're in, is it healthy for them or unhealthy for them to have this relationship with the show?
Well, my daughter challenges me on that question all the time. She feels like they're being exploited and it's bad for them. And I said, look, they get a life out of this. These are people that may not have there may be a price, and I'm sure there is. And Susan, you want to get on the horn here a little bit? My wife's still listening to us. Get on here. You talk about how they're spoken.
I'm just the sound person.
I know. You talk about how Howard speaks to them sometimes. You feel like the things he says are like, oh my God, but that they tolerate that because they
tolerate a lot of abuse that nobody else in the world could get.
I don't know that it's the same ball busting that he does to Gary. And they do to me if I walk in there. They ball bust everybody, including people that have disabilities. And by being a part of this, they are given a lot. They get a lot of secondary gain. That's why they do it. You're right. Now they may not be making a judgment that's good for them necessarily. And what concerns me, Jolie, is we've talked to a few of these guys so far, and they all have brain injury histories. So that concerns me that they're not making good judgments on their own behalf. But they are getting a lot out of being
I'm just curious if they have any reflection on it afterwards when they're behind
do they have
scenes.
Feelings about it? Are they disturbed by it? Jolie, what do you think?
Well, Erik has that's an excellent point in question. Erik has definitely voiced to me. I don't know how much I can or can't say. Like, are there things I shouldn't say? Like in terms of
not to us.
No,
we don't know.
No
words or
no. Go ahead.
No. Oh no.
Okay, so there's a character, before it even comes out of my mouth, Debbie the Cum Lady.
Yes.
Who is a character on the show who Howard called while we were
in studio here. There are people with proper names like Gonzo Shitcock. I mean, we have to we have to deal with that.
That's I love Gonzo. He's like my brother. So, but Debbie the Cum Lady, here's an example. Erik was telling me for like 2 months before that appearance even happened in the studio that, they want me, Debbie the Cum Lady wants to give me a blowjob, and like I don't want to do it, babe. I don't want to do it. And he was basically, what it boiled down to, and what he said to me was he didn't want me to think bad of him.
No, he doesn't want you to be jealous and leave him. He wanted to do it. He wanted to do it. He doesn't want you to get mad.
But I had to convince, I'm like, Erik, you're getting a blowjob out of it. Like, you don't have to do anything else. Like, I mean, if I'm you, I'm taking that, because that might be the only action you get, all decade. I mean, not to sound crass or anything, but I'm like, go for it. And plus, I mean, it's not any different than, and I know Howard's show is so different now, but back in the day when, Erik was doing porn, Erik was in a couple of porn movies because of the show. And Dr. Drew, I agree. I mean, I agree with you and Susan, and I agree with everyone across the board that there's pluses and minuses, but Erik wouldn't have a life but not for the show.
Okay, we talked to him.
You know what I mean?
It was clear that he was. It might be reinforcing some of his manipulativeness, but he was clear. He'd lay it down for the show. He's fine with that.
Which makes me always worry, and that's why I always ask this question: is the show is not going to be there forever, right? He's been threatening to leave for a while. People will say
Correct.
This is the last one he's doing, which always leads the question: what is going to happen to Erik after the show is gone?
Ami raised that question, and it was like, according to Erik, when he opposed it to Erik, it was like, did somebody say something? I'm not hearing this. When he posed it to Jeff the drunk, he hung up on us.
Right.
No.
Yeah. So
what? So Jolie, what do you think is going to happen to Erik after the show is gone?
Well, let's talk about how I think Erik is smarter than he's given credit for sometimes. Erik is already talking about he wants to move to Atlanta. So Erik knows that, Howard's got a few years left at best, that he's going to do the show. That's his livelihood, but that's going to end in some capacity. I mean, he'll always be High Pitch Erik, but that, he's not going to be doing appearances and staying relevant and keeping his name out there and all these other things. So Erik's already looked into moving to Atlanta because I'm sure he feels like he's going to move here and I'll just take care of him for the rest of his life in terms of, not monetarily speaking, but just being the friend that.
Yeah.
I don't need
that.
Sometimes I feel like he wants to have sex with me. I don't really know what his attraction is to me. Is it romantic? Am I his mom? What am I to him? But
combination of all those things.
Yeah, you're someone who's responding to him, and he likes that. And you need a therapist. We got to get you a therapist.
Which is odd because you don't look like Donnie Wahlberg.
Yeah.
Right. It is. It's weird. He actually chose me over Donnie one night. When we were
really?
doing something in Pittsburgh. Yeah. Julie asked him, and he was like, I'd have to choose Jolie. But that aside, I mean, I have to just say, I'm not the only one that, like Dr. Drew said, responds to Erik. I mean, Erik has all these people out here on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on whatever social media there is who love him, who call and text and say, can I buy you a pizza tonight? I mean, I'm the only woman he hasn't threatened, which is why I think Howard wanted to speak to me. Like there's a phenomenon there, but it's not just me. I mean.
Oh, I know. We told you. And he sort of thinks that's all going to be around the rest of his life. He kind of hinted at that. So maybe he's, I don't know. I who am I to say? But let's flesh out the rest of the experience on the show the other day.
Sure.
How was the rest of the show for you? Any standouts? How did it happen? How did you get picked? Did Gary contact you or Julie? Or what happened?
So Erik was coming to Atlanta for my family does this pig roast every year, and Gonzo and Erik had come the year before, so we're like, this is going to be our little tradition. We're going to do this every year. So they were coming down. It was about a month before that, which was in June. So I guess in May, I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. I guess in May, Erik called me and says, I just got a call from the show. They want me to be here on this date, which I think was the 26th. And it's a surprise. They can't tell me what it's about. And babe, I really want you to be there. He calls me babe. So,
yeah, we got that.
So I'm like, Erik, y'all are coming down for this pig roast, and I have the other things for work. We'll see. Like, if I can get there, I will. And then I'd gotten a call. Erik didn't tell me that they might be interested in having me actually talk to Howard, like be on the show. And,
yeah.
Of course, I knew I would go upstairs with him and maybe just hang out while he did whatever. And then I think Erik said to Julie or someone, Jolie doesn't want to be a part of this. She's not, this is not what she wants to do. So I got a call from Julie. It's like,
okay.
If Howard wanted to talk to you, would you? And I'm like, of course, that's fine. And so anyway, so I went, and they had me on within a couple of minutes. And I guess everyone there, and maybe they say this to everyone, Dr. Drew, I don't know, but like all the guys, Sal, Richard, everyone met, they were like, you were so poised and so calm. Weren't you nervous? And I was like, I wasn't nervous at all. And they're like, we can't believe that. You know, most people get nervous talking to Howard, but Howard made me feel really comfortable.
Yeah, he is.
There was a lot of eye contact.
He is easy to talk to. He's an extremely good interviewer. But they don't know. They don't say much to most people. You just kind of get Ronnie's steely glare on the way out the door, and that's it. Come with me.
Like, get this guy out of here.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Gary's always very nice, and you usually get Gary and Ronnie and maybe some Shuli, and that's it. You know, you have to go back and find.
Gary's so nice.
He's just a great guy, yeah. And he is, you know, a big reason for the show's success and the way things work. And there's a lot of people that spend a lot of time and energy. I am wondering if your peers or patients take any issue with all this.
So that's a good question. And forgive me, I call them clients. They're mostly work comp injuries, and they don't people with these kind of injuries. If you call them a patient, that kind of indicates that they're sick. But mostly they're living with an injury, so they're clients. Okay. But they don't know. I mean, I'm sure someone could log on to Twitter.
Okay. How about your your peers?
They really don't know either. You know, a handful of them do. And I'm sure that it's 50-50. It's either they think it's cool or they're like, oh my God, because it's such a conservative state, Georgia.
And we're a conservative field too, medicine and nursing. My goodness.
Well, it's very conservative, but if I could just say this, when you compare that, like something like an appearance on the Stern Show, to the things that I hear and see in homes, that's real life. That's like way more hardcore than anything I could say or do on Howard Stern. And
of course.
You know. Yeah, and same for you, I'm sure.
Yeah, I've had to grow some thick skin over the years, but it's absolutely the case. I agree with you. Head injuries. Now, we're sort of uncovering that most of the Wack Packers have some sort of neurological history. I mean, Sour Shoes was hit with a bat and then developed these strange abilities, and I'm sure Bigfoot got something neurological going on. We found out that Jeff the Drunk was a major head injury. Does any of the and of course Beetle? I mean, you go one after the other. There's a lot of really significant brain stuff going on here. Does that concern you?
No, I mean that. In a way, it tells me why. I mean, I've had a lot of other members of the Wack Pack reach out to me. So I don't know if I look like some sort of beacon for them or what.
Who has reached out? Just out of curiosity, if you can say.
Who has reached out to me? Jeff the Drunk has reached out to me.
Yeah, of course, Jeff. Sure.
Medicated Pete.
We're going to talk to Pete.
You
know, Tan Mom has a terrible head injury history. I mean, unbelievable.
No, I didn't know that. I wish we
could talk
about that, though, because that fascinates me.
She was kidnapped or something and thrown down a well and was down there for a week before she was found. That was her first head injury. Her next head injury, she was 8 months pregnant, was punched while she was in a bar, and ended up on a ventilator in a coma for like 4 months or something. Had some sort of intraparenchymal, intracranial or subdural bleed, something such as that. Ended up needing a craniotomy, and she says she has a plate in there. Has a severe seizure disorder, and a lot of the stuff that we see with Tan Mom is a result of all the frontal lobe injury she has.
So that's why she sounds drunk all the time?
And she drinks. She also drinks. Right,
but she sounds drunk every single time she comes on.
Well, that's all.
Not just drunk. She sounds drunk and drugged. I mean, it sounds like a lot of pills.
I think it's largely an organic personality disorder. I think a lot of that is that. No impulse control, doesn't perceive social cues normally, and really is I think struggling. But
Dr. Drew, has that been fact-checked? I mean, is that really true?
It's a good question. I've confirmed it with people that know her, because we used to cover her as a news story on HLN before she got onto the Stern show, but I don't have any absolute confirmation of that. So,
I mean, the frontal lobe injury with like you said, her impulses would make so much sense.
Yeah.
But I had never heard that. And then the story about being kidnapped and thrown into a well. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's really hard for me.
It's a weird one. Yeah, it's a weird
believe.
one.
That's the craziest story.
Well, but the husband, I think the husband was the one that told me about the one while pregnant, because she was supposed to lose the baby and she was supposed to die, and they gave her last ride. They have a whole story like that. And not only did she make it, and the baby made it, and everything was so-called fine. But I don't know.
Both got tan.
Yeah, but yes, thus she entered the public consciousness.
So that Sour Shoes had been hit in the head with a bat. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah,
I believe it was a baseball. Not the
a baseball. That's right. It was a baseball.
Yeah.
The baseball. That's right. And then I'm dying to talk to his parents to see what was he like before that. And he came out here to Pepperdine and ended up living in his car. He couldn't function. Again, suggesting some real serious brain something, parietal or frontal lobe injury. But anyway, it is a privilege to talk to you, Jolie. I hope you enjoyed speaking with us. We enjoyed speaking with you. Ami, any last-minute questions?
No, I think we kind of covered it. I think it's fascinating. You are an empathetic person, and I have a lot of empathy for you with what you have to go through with him.
Well, thank you.
And I don't know how you do it.
I don't know sometimes either. I mean, every now and then I just have to give him one of those, we need to talk, and you've got to give me some space. And that in itself is tiring. But I am going to take Dr. Drew's advice and seek therapy for myself, because I deserve it.
Well, you deserve it. You need it to survive, being effective in this relationship if you're going to stay in it, number one. And number two, you have all that unresolved grief and guilt and codependency stuff. I mean, you need to take care of that. That's all.
Actually, I did have one last question.
Sure.
Was regarding your friend, when he was over in Atlanta, and you said you had a hot friend who started grinding on him and was essentially offering to have sex with him, and he refused to do it, right? Do I have that story right? Mm-hmm. What was the deal there? Why is he, I guess because we, obviously they speculate about this on the show a lot, and we talked to Erik about this as well. He claims he is completely heterosexual, which is clearly not true, but he may in fact be bisexual. What is how do you come at, what's your feel about where he is sexually?
Well, the same thing. First of all, Gonzo and I both think he turned this person down because of me.
Yep, I agree. Because he can't imagine losing you.
Right, and he said he didn't want to disrespect me. We were in my home. But it's the same thing I told Howard. I feel that Erik is so desperate for love and affection, and it's such a basic need. Like, as humans, we need to be touched and loved, and that to feel safe, like someone's a safe place or a safe person. He doesn't have any of that.
Yeah. And
I think he would take it from anyone that will give it. I think that because of the emotional, what were you saying about emotional maturity?
Developmental issues
in that area.
Yeah, developmental issues.
That
yes.
That I think he may not even want to, just bear with me on this, he may not even want to have sex with Donnie Wahlberg.
Yep.
But he doesn't know how to tell you and me that he has a major man crush on him.
I agree.
Like,
I agree.
I mean, Dr. Drew.
In other words, he doesn't know how to express
so many
his
people's
love.
Man crush, so
no, it's like something that like 6 to 10-year-old kids get sometimes. Boys will get crushes on boys and things, and they confuse love and sex and closeness, and that's sort of where I agree with you. I was thinking the same thing.
So that's my take on Erik's sexuality. I think he would take love from wherever he could get it, and I think that he doesn't know how to really say that he has this bromance for Donnie. Doesn't mean he wants to have sex with him, but Erik thinks that that's the next step when you like someone.
Right.
It's very.
And then Howard drives it all the way home. Then you have to have.
And why wouldn't he?
Right.
Really seriously, it's been my pleasure and a privilege. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jolie.
Thank you, Jolie.
And we're going to take a little break, and we'll be right back.
This is the Howard Vortex with Dr. Drew and Ami Horowitz.
So, wow, Dr. Drew, that was really, really interesting. What was your kind of major takeaways here?
Well, first of all, it's a little bit of a proof of concept in my mind in terms of learning something from the Wack Pack adjacent. Because here we have, a really accomplished professional, a smart woman who was observing Erik and giving us her thoughts, and it was very interesting. That was interesting. Number one. Number two, it's sort of it's. I have a lot of feelings about it because I could see myself prior to therapy going down that path with patients and getting sort of stuck in these places where if you were better able at setting boundaries, it'd be better off for everybody if you didn't go. Jolie got herself way downstream in this relationship, and once you're there, she's right. She kind of has to see it through.
But this can't end well, right? It just can't.
That's the point. That's why you have to set boundaries earlier, and it ends up. I mean, I'm sure Erik's getting a lot out of it, and as I was talking to Jolie, there's some secondary gain for her as well. And so I don't want to take that away from anybody. I'm glad Erik's getting something out of it. Maybe it's a lot. Maybe it's making his life as meaningful as the show is itself. But you're right. Eventually, reality has to kind of come to bear. I don't see Jolie being his lifelong caretaker.
I mean, this guy has self-destructed every relationship he has ever had.
Yeah.
And it's particularly with women. And, that's one part of it. The second part of it I thought was so fascinating is, she's so invested with him that if, God forbid, he does something to himself, how will she ever live with herself, considering what happened to her sister?
That's exactly right. That's how he locks her in, right? And that's like Howard said, it's the Stockholm Syndrome, but it's abusive. I mean, that's domestic abuse, where you really have a cult of two going here. And I don't want to be too pejorative in saying so. I mean, I'm not saying it's like domestic violence you'd prosecute or you'd report. I'm just saying it's not okay. It's not a healthy situation, and it's distressing. And I feel bad for Jolie, but she's okay.
But it makes for a great podcast.
Makes for a good podcast. It makes for good radio, and it's an interesting phenomenon. Susan, any observations on your part?
Where can we find everybody?
You can find me at doctor.com. Please go check all the podcast out we have there. And Ami, how about you? How about your YouTube page?
This will be available on Ami's webpage.
Yeah, you can find me you can find both this podcast and me at AmiHorowitz.com, the repository for all things Ami Horowitz. Or you can tweet at me at Ami Horowitz or on my YouTube page, which is, believe it or not, Ami Horowitz.
And I'll look for your Peruvian, whatever it is, adventure. On the YouTube page. What did you do there? Did you hold up signs or something?
That was just vacation. That was just a vacation, me and my wife. No video camera, no sound crew.
Your poor wife. And you still couldn't resist being Ami Horowitz up there on the top. And you couldn't just take in the beauty and the majesty of the human experience.
I had to politicize it. I had to make a big deal out of it, and it frankly dominated our trip. I'm sure she did not love that part of it.
Your poor wife.
But I was just so fascinated by people trying to elevate a culture which clearly had no reason to be elevated.
It was primitive. Well, come on now. I see both sides. I understand your point you're making. But if it is a primitive culture that does have very limited technologies, it is pretty interesting what the human's able to do, is it not?
True, and they didn't have written language, so I guess that's both regressive and impressive that they can do all this without being able to write in the 1500s. I don't know how to explain it. I don't.
Well, they didn't have contact with the more developed world, right?
Okay, but the Mayans didn't have contact with the more developed world, and they were far more advanced. The Chinese were essentially kind of on their own. I mean, yeah, to a certain extent, but that's not. I don't know. There was a whole continent they were on. They weren't cut off from other people on the continent.
They were afraid of them. They had to climb up on a mountain and hide themselves, get away from
That's true.
Something.
All right, don't get me started again.
All right. We will leave it here and conclude and see you all next time.
Bye-bye.
This is the Howard Vortex with Dr. Drew and Ami Horowitz.